Welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Football Predictive Analytics with Rhys and longtime friend Ryan McDowell. Ryan, how are you this week?
Doing well, guys. Glad to be back on here with you all. It's always good to talk to Rhys, and it's okay to talk to Jeff too.
I hear that, man. I get that kind of treatment from Rhys. Hey, in fact, last time you talked to Rhys, he had long hair and he got it all cut now.
I was noticing that, yeah.
And so it's just one of those things.
Cold one.
I feel more at home now.
Yeah, me too. Ryan, how are your dynasty leagues going? How are your teams doing this year?
Pretty good. It's a weird question to answer after this week 7. All the buys. I mean, everybody was going through the same thing. I guess that's the good news. We were kind of on even footing with so many good players out. But yeah, I would say competitive in almost every dynasty league. So that's a decent spot to be. I'm definitely not running away with any titles yet, but hopefully grind out a few.
So Rhys, KS1, Ryan has an awesome team. I have an okay team. It's my third best KS team. But Ryan and I are 1-2. He's got a game or two up on me. I don't know if he noticed. But Ryan's got a juggernaut in that league. Do you not?
I think I've got a good team in that one. That's also the I think that's the lowest entry stakes, or lowest stakes, I guess you could say of the kitchen sink league. So I wish I had better teams in the ones that are a little more costly and a little more rewarding, but it's always good to have good teams. Yeah. I've got Deshaun Watson on that team. Of course, that's been a big storyline. Maybe it continues to be a big storyline in the coming days here. That's been tough to deal with, obviously, from a super flex standpoint, and going way beyond football and fantasy football, a touchy subject to say the least. I mean, I don't even know if I'm rooting for this guy to play. It's such a weird situation when you mix in fantasy. You've got him on your team, you want some production, but also it's just a question of, do we even want to cheer for this guy? I don't know.
Yeah. So who else is on that juggernaut team for you?
I've got Dak Prescott and Tua on that one. So that's again, super flex league, not the strongest quarterback core there, thanks to Watson. Running backs, I've got Zeke and Kamara, and I've got Darrell Henderson having a big year. He's been a nice surprise. Got good wide receivers, Tyreek Hill and DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Claypool, and then I've got Andrews and Kelsey. So some pretty good pieces. Russell Wilson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the injured reserve right now. Not too bad.
So he's got Dak, Wilson, and Watson. And he says not so bad. So Ryan, just for the sake of Rhys, pull over to my team in that league and show him, especially after today, I had to put Adams on injured reserve for COVID.
Yeah.
Hurt me.
I have been surprised. I mean, that it's starting to pop up here a little bit, of course, with Adams and Lazard now as well, his teammate. A bit surprised that COVID overall has not been a bigger storyline this year as far as impacting players, pushing any games back. Of course, it feels like that's all we dealt with last year. And it's not quite a non-story, but it seems like teams are just dealing with it and moving on. So let's see. I'm looking for your team. Here we go. Okay, you've got, I think this is a good topic here. Jeff, you always hoard these quarterbacks, so I always know you're going to have half a dozen quarterbacks on your team. You've got Lawrence and Justin Fields
on taxi. No, that one I don't have on taxi, do I?
Right, yeah, you've got them there available to use, and then got some veterans as well: Teddy, Matt Ryan, Ben Roethlisberger, Garoppolo. Cam Newton, that could be another story in the coming days. I feel like that's eventually going to be a change for him, that he gets back into the league. Couple different teams need some help the quarterback position, to say the least, right now. I can't believe the Jets. And I mean, I know it's a different offense from what you would have with Zach Wilson or what you would have with with Joe Flacco, but I can't believe you'd rather give a fifth or sixth round pick for Joe Flacco rather than sign Cam Newton off the street. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
You say that Minshew was for a 6th round pick, and I'd much rather Minshew than Flacco, because I know Minshew put up 15, 20 points.
Andy's cheap, and
Yes.
Minshew's still on that rookie deal. But
Well,
Ryan,
you could look at half a dozen teams at least around the league that should have been in on Minshew. You know, we deal with that in fantasy leagues and dynasty leagues too, right? I mean, somebody else in your league pulls off a trade and you think, oh, I would have paid more than that, right? I would have given the guy a second. He took a third. And I mean, the Steelers had to have been thinking that, and Washington and so many other teams that Jacksonville only got a 6th rounder for Minshew. Like, I would have given a 4th. But, you know, sometimes you got to knock on the door and see what the price is.
oh yeah, in that league though, Ryan, I had Eckler you may like it or not, but anybody that's listening, the KS leagues are contracts. So you're making bad trades that are good trades because of contracts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I gave up Eckler on a 1 and Connor on a 2 for Barkley on a 2 and Booker on a 1. And just to be able to juggle my ones. But anyway,
no, I liked that move. I think Barkley's. I didn't think I'd be calling Barkley a buy low, but that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah,
There's ups and downs, like most fantasy players, at least most players in fantasy so far this year.
oh yeah.
So a year from now, October, we're filming this on, I believe, the 26th. Who will be the top player at each position in Dynasty that you see? You can also list off your top 3 or top tier, depending on how you see them.
Yeah, I always love this topic because this is really, when it comes to Dynasty, this is kind of how my mind works, and almost every move I make in Dynasty is kind of coming from this standpoint of thinking about future value. Thinking about ADP, I deal with that so much. And Jeff, I know you're kind of in the same boat with me. You look at the quarterback position right now, I don't foresee a ton of change, honestly. I feel like we have 4 or 5, maybe 6 top guys, depending on how you value Dak and Justin Herbert, those guys kind of at the bottom of that tier. But you know, despite what we've seen the past couple of weeks, I still think Patrick Mahomes is the QB1 right now. I still think a year from now, he'll be the QB1. He'll be 27 at that point. Tyreek Hill's not going anywhere. I don't think Travis Kelce's going anywhere over the next year. Definitely getting closer to that age wall. He's 32 now, I believe. So just turned 32. So we're going to see him start to slow down for sure. But if you're just thinking over the next year, week 7 or 8 of the 2022 season, the Chiefs are still going to be producing, and Mahomes is still QB1 in my opinion. I think Kyler Murray, so far what we've seen this year, is kind of locked himself into that QB2 spot, and really I see some upside there. He's not running nearly as much as he has the past couple of years. He hasn't had to. They're killing other teams, and he doesn't have to run the ball. He's of course got some added weapons there in Arizona. So I feel like whether it's a situation of they're in tight games, if one of those receivers goes down, whatever might force Kyler to run the ball more, he's gaining value as a result of that. And as I said, locking himself into that second spot. I know most people would say Josh Allen next. It's still Lamar Jackson for me, but obviously Josh Allen is right there in that 3-4 spot as well. So that's kind of how I would see the top 3 quarterbacks right now.
I have Allen below them, and I actually think Watson and or Lawrence could impact those top 5.
For sure. I mean, you've got the, I guess, the big 3 rookies. I don't know if it's fair to call them that right now, the way they've started, but Lawrence, Fields, Lance. I think people still see a lot of upside with all 3 of those guys. And if we see some consistent production from them, I mean, they're already valued pretty highly. So if we see the production from them, it's not going to take much, I don't think, to move them ahead of, maybe Russell Wilson, maybe even Dak Prescott value wise. And then Watson's the ultimate wild card. I mean, who knows? Honestly, I still kind of see a 2022 suspension. But of course, I'm no legal expert. I listened to your buddy over at Football Guys, Drew Davenport, on that stuff. He's done a great job sharing his thoughts on Twitter and on his podcast about the Watson situation. So, like I said earlier, I don't even know what I'm rooting for at this point. But that's a messy one. But you're right. If he's on the field, if he's playing, he's going to produce, especially if he's on a new offense with presumably better weapons than what he's had the past couple of years with Houston.
Yeah.
So a trade to Carolina, a trade to Philly, a trade to I heard your Broncos thrown around, Rhys. I don't know if that's, we're getting into crazy season as the trade deadline approaches, and you start hearing all kinds of things. I kind of feel like Carolina has to be the leader right now. That front office, that ownership has been aggressive, really since they took over. And this would be another aggressive move, certainly, going out and getting Watson, especially after they picked up the option on Sam Darnold for next year.
Yes, I do agree with you that Carolina's the front runner, but also as a fantasy player, can you imagine him and Christian McCaffrey in the same backfield and throwing to DJ Moore, Terrence Marshall, Robbie Anderson?
Yeah. So Rhys, you on the Josh Allen, Rhys pointed out a pretty interesting Josh Allen stat to me today. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Oh, the Bills have yet to beat a team with a 500 record. Yeah, we're calling them Super Bowl contenders. They've done that, and Allen's only played one game. And that was week 1 against the Steelers, against a team that is not top 10 in points given up to quarterbacks.
Yeah, that is interesting. It seems like there's a lot of Josh Allen haters out there ready to bury him. It was a little bit of a slow start. I'm not saying you're one of those, Rhys. Not saying it's you.
Oh, it's not
a little
me.
bit of a
It's
slow
the guy
start
next
for
to
him.
me.
It's me. I am he.
You own it, huh? Yeah, like I said, I not really a hater, but I'm with you on favoring Lamar and some of those other guys over Allen. At running back, of course, changing of the guard, right? It's been McCaffrey and Cook and Kamara and Zeke there. Jonathan Taylor's been there the past year after an impressive rookie season, but now we've thrown it all up in the air. Like, it's that gif of just throwing the papers all up in the air and they're coming down everywhere. And that's what we've got. Some people are still there. Some dynasty managers still there with those veterans as the top guys. And I get that, some of them are producing. Kamara had a great game on Monday night. But I'm always one that's going to kind of shift and lean towards the youth. So, if and I didn't even mention Barkley in there. I just realizing that now that I left him out of that group. But if DeAndre Swift and Dalvin Cook are basically going to score in the same range on a week-to-week basis, then there's no conversation. Give me the guy that's 3 or 4 years younger. So you can talk about Swift and Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris in that group, comparing them to how these veterans are producing. And so right now, if I'm looking ahead to next year, those would be my top 3: Taylor, Swift, and Najee Harris.
I noticed how you did not mention, when you're talking about the veterans, you did not mention the running back one through the past 7 games, Derrick Henry, or even Nick Chubb, and one of those guys. Where do you rank them in there?
It's been a real like roller coaster for me and Derrick Henry, because I've always been one of those who has made excuses not to value him higher. Whether it's age, he's a year or 2 older than Kamara and Cook, or the workload, or the fact that he's not heavily involved in the passing game. There's a lot of people out there that make those excuses. I've been one of those. even through last year when he was rushing for 2,000 yards. But I mean, I've come to the conclusion we call Christian McCaffrey a freak because of his skill on the field, his work in the passing game as a receiver and as a rusher. And I mean, Derrick Henry is as much of a freak, if not more so. And at this point, if I'm contending, and I really do think, and I know some people keep contending rankings versus building rankings, or however you want to think about that, productive struggle rankings, I guess you could say. If I'm contending, there's no running back I want more right now than Derrick Henry. Now, that doesn't mean he's my RB1 in Dynasty, but on those kitchen sink teams, I would trade any of my running backs easily right now for him, including Kamara or anybody else I might have.
Yeah, especially
Nick Chubb. I mean, Nick Chubb would be. He might not even be in my top 12 running backs right now. We're just not going to see. We're not going to see the rush or the receiving production. Same thing we would say with Henry. I don't think he's that freaky type of runner like Henry is, as far as he's going to run over people. He's already shown, unfortunately, he doesn't have the durability that Henry does, being nicked up a little bit over the past couple of years.
nicked up, pun intended, I'm sure.
Oh, actually, no.
Two things for you, Ryan. First of all, would you rather have Hunt or Chubb for Dynasty?
Still Chubb. Yeah, still Chubb. But I think it's a conversation, and it probably wasn't at the beginning of the season. I know Hunt's outscored him so far.
Yeah. And so Rhys, Ryan puts out on Twitter, it may have been yesterday, hey, you can make a case for running back, receiver, tight end, a rookie being top at his position. And Ryan took offense at my response.
No, not at all. Not at all.
He told me not to give up, as in my day job. All I said is, he puts that out there, and all I say is, I don't have Trey Sermon as high as others, I guess.
There was actually some confusion on which rookie running back that could be, that could be in consideration for the RB1 spot overall. And of course, I'm referring to Najee Harris, but there were some who couldn't think of any rookie running back who should be in that category. There were some who thought it might be Javonte Williams I was referring to. I've been impressed with Williams so far. I think he's gained value. I've seen some who suggest he might have lost value so far through the first couple months of the season. I don't think there's any discount on him in Dynasty. If there is, I want to take advantage of it, though.
Let me ask both of you. I'll ask Rhys first, give you a chance. Dynasty, do you want Etienne or Javonte Williams?
Javonte Williams. Melvin Gordon's going to be out in a year or two, and I'd much rather be behind Melvin Gordon, especially because now we'll get the extra, month or two where Williams is fully past Gordon. We'll get that we won't get with Etienne. And with Javonte, he's got better offensive line, and I trust the people calling plays a lot more than the Jacksonville mess, which isn't saying much, but because my friends could run the Jacksonville Jaguars better than their owner, but
could they grind out some rankings that would? Never mind. Urban Meyer's got that covered. Ryan, which one would you rather have?
Javonte, not really a question at this point. Not even close for me. As I said, I think he's gained value. If the Broncos are smart, Melvin Gordon should be gone in a day or two. He should be one of these guys being shopped at the trade deadline, in my opinion. They've got to be realistic about their outlook the rest of the season. And I don't know what his market is. Maybe he gets you a 5th rounder or something like that. Maybe he gets you some, I don't know, some help on defense or something. But getting anything from Melvin Gordon and handing the job to Javonte Williams would be a smart move. Probably not something we'll see at this point. I would assume, that the NFL trade deadline is usually a lot of talk and not much action.
Yeah.
But you say that, but what would be his market outside of a team like Baltimore, yes, but there's not much market. Baltimore, Miami, maybe
KC. But the other good thing for Denver, and Ryan's going to laugh at me on this, all the Dynasty guys, you'll see it. If this happens, you'll see it all over Twitter. People just going bonkers over Mike Boone now in Denver being Javante's backup. There's this there's this Mike Boone cult out there among Dynasty owners, Rhys, that is untold. Is this true, Ryan?
It is true for some reason. I don't get it. I mean, a nice player, good preseason guy, always seems to pop in the preseason, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe he would get some opportunity. As far as Gordon's market, I mean, the market for any veteran running back is not going to be strong. I mean, you're not getting a day 1 or day 2 pick for Melvin Gordon. But again, getting anything for him, I think he's a free agent at the end of the season. Rhys, you probably know better on that than I do. But getting anything for him versus him walking at the end of the season or even at the end of next year, whenever that contract is up, is a better move. And yeah, Jeff, you mentioned Baltimore 5-2, tied for the top of that division. They should be interested, I would think. And then just, I mean, the Raiders, I haven't heard too much more about Jacobs' injury. They're leading their division. They could definitely use a guy like that. I don't know if Denver and the Raiders would ever pull off a trade. that they don't want to help each other. But yeah, if you look at running back rankings, fantasy rankings over the past 2 or 3 weeks, I mean, your top 12, top 15, top 20 is littered with backup running backs that we didn't really care about a month ago. And a lot of those teams should be interested in a guy like Melvin Gordon.
If Sony Michel can get a 4th, it's hard for me to imagine that Gordon gets a ton less.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Sorry, go ahead, Rhys.
Oh no, you go.
I was just still thinking about our top players at each position. We hadn't talked wide receiver yet. It's got to be Jamar Chase. It's got to be Jamar Chase at the top. We're 7 games into his career. He's been dominant, a dominant start to his career. And the good thing is, and you can argue Chase versus Jefferson or AJ Brown or DK Metcalf or CD Lamb. The good thing, in my opinion, is that we've got all these options, right? Even if you don't get the number 1 guy, even if you get the 5th guy, you're still getting DK Metcalf or AJ Brown or whoever that might end up being. I think the really interesting conversation is that group versus Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. Maybe we can include Stephon Diggs in there. He started the season a little slowly compared to last year, but it goes back to the same thing I said with running backs. If you're telling me that player A and player B are scoring within 2 or 3 points of each other on a week in and week out basis, I don't even need to know names. Give me the younger guy.
Yeah. One last thought for you on the running backs. When Cam Akers comes back from injury next season, how do you expect that backfield to play out?
There was a report yesterday that if they make the playoffs and make a deep playoff run, he could get back on the field. I was shocked to see that. Again, far from a doctor or medical expert, but we've all seen once he went down with that injury, we all saw the comps. We saw the list of running backs who have dealt with that injury in the past, and it's an ugly list, not because of the names that are on there, but because they never really came back and were a factor in the league. And I don't know how much medicine has changed and the way that's treated and repaired. I don't know how much that's changed over the past few years. I will say Marlon Mack, who had the same injury, has been better than I expected him to be. I didn't think we'd ever see him again in the league, and he's been solid, a solid third option there in Indianapolis. He's getting a little bit of trade buzz as well as we head into this deadline. So that's good news. Henderson's also been a lot better than I expected and than most people expected. And my buddy Dan Myler, who co-hosts the DLF podcast with me, said it pretty well a couple weeks ago. Henderson has been what we wanted Cam Akers to be.
Yes.
He's been that all around back. He's produced. He's gotten work in the red zone. He's catching the ball. He's doing it all. As great as we thought Cam Akers would be and expected him to be, I don't know how you just totally go away from Darrell Henderson. So, I mean, if they're both healthy, if at the start of next year or even at the end of this season, if that somehow happens, I think it's got to be at least some type of share backfield. You can't just dump Darrell Henderson or make him a backup.
No, I would say he's got to stay healthy for a prolonged. I mean, Henderson, let's see a longer sample of him staying healthy with the full workload would be my only, because he didn't have that much workload at Memphis, and even like last year when Akers missed a game or two, we all got excited and got let down. And so
I think we're also talking about a totally different offense. And all based on that quarterback change.
Yeah, I'm with you. How about on the receivers? You mentioned that big chunk of guys. I have a lesser ranked guy that I think is going to be important to many for various reasons. Many fancy finishes. Who?
I was going to guess your boy McLaurin.
No. I think McLaurin is bound by, like, I have McLaurin super high. I have him in my top 5, but I think he is limited in the short term by quarterback play. But there's two receivers that I think that could impact dynasty playoff finishes. One is Michael Thomas, the other is Jerry Jeudy. And Jeudy comes back this coming week. Thomas is still a week or two away. And no, New Orleans doesn't throw the ball much, and no, Teddy hasn't played that great, but the wide receiver position's looking pretty ugly at times during these bye weeks.
Sure.
And so I don't know, if we see vintage Mike Thomas, it's hard for me not to think that he's going to be important or impactful for fantasy. And Jeudy played great. Jeudy was set up for success. Yes.
Yeah, Thomas. I think at this point I'm just kind of I'll believe it when I see it. Kind of with Thomas. I'm still not convinced he plays at all this season. Of course, the injury issue and just in general being frustrated and disgruntled with the Saints front office or coaching staff or whatever the situation is. And yeah, like you kind of alluded to there, I don't know if that's a team we want a part of anyway, outside of Kamara. I mean, Jameis, we know throws those YOLO balls, right? He'll just throw them up, but we haven't really seen that. So I don't know if that he's being limited a little bit by Sean Payton, which probably should be as turnover prone as he has been in the past. So Thomas would not be one I would be investing in. If you've got him on your roster and he comes back, then of course, great news. That's kind of a free square as we get close to the fantasy playoffs. Jeudy, I would definitely be more interested in, although Cortland Sutton has played really well, I think, especially over the past couple of weeks with Jeudy gone. So it will be interesting to see how those two coexist and really who the alpha is there, because I'm not sure. I thought it would be Jeudy. Maybe Sutton has claimed that role.
Yes. 2 thoughts for you. One, we do have to give credit to the Broncos for getting Bridgewater for, I believe it was a 5th, while the Jets cut Darnold for a 2nd. Panthers got Darnold for a 2nd.
And it's the same price as the Jets paid for Flacco.
Yes. And 2, I saw a graphic from ESPN during the Monday Night Football game where before the game, Winston was on pace for 40 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So we do have to give him some credit for at least being a fantasy viable quarterback starter-ish, at least if he's throwing 40 touchdowns.
And it's all touchdowns, right? Because I forgot which game it was. He had 150 yards and 4 touchdowns.
That's against the Packers.
And I was like, and it's hard for me. I'm not a stat head kind of guy, but it's hard for me not to think that there's going to be regression.
Mhm.
As we move into tight ends, Ryan, let me lead you with this. There's three guys at the top, and you get to put them in order. I think three guys. I'll say Waller, Kelsey, and Pitts. Are those the top three you would have in Dynasty?
If we're looking ahead to next year, it would be different for me. As I said, I think we're starting to see a little bit of a drop for Travis Kelsey. Not necessarily his production. You don't want to take too much away just from this one game we saw this past Sunday, but the numbers are still there. The production's still there, but we're seeing him get nicked up. He's coming in and out of the game a lot more. And I'm just afraid that he's going to be one of those guys that once he hits the wall, he hits it hard. So with some younger tight ends playing well, I would probably push Kelsey out of the top three if we're talking about October of 2022. So, I mean, Pitts is certainly the number one. I don't think there's any argument there. If you look at these positions we talked about, I think you can talk Mahomes versus Kyler. Running back is certainly wide open. I think wide receiver's pretty wide open. I don't think there's any argument at tight end. It's Kyle Pitts. Not even a year from now. It's Kyle Pitts today, easily. Then the argument comes in. So Andrews and Hawkinson have their merit for sure. Andrews is probably playing better than any tight end in the league right now. I would still have Waller in the top three as well. A little bit younger than Kelsey, outside of this slump, which and now injury over the last week or so. He's nearly matched Kelsey in production the past couple of years.
Mine would be almost exactly like yours: Pitts, Andrews, and then Waller, because I don't trust Kittle's injuries. Don't trust him with that. You mentioned Kelsey's wall, and I don't trust Hawkinson's quarterback. And who does that leave us?
The one guy that could sneak up, that's an old guy, is Zach Ertz, because he looked involved in the Arizona game. And I just meant, you'd have to choose, because Ertz is not young either, but
same age as Kelsey.
Right. But I meant if he's getting 8 or 10 targets a game, you have to at least consider him.
Yes.
Am I wrong there, Ryan, or would you still go with the Hawk or Andrews?
Yeah, I don't think I can push Ertz that high. I think the trade definitely and obviously helpful for him, but to me, he's just going to be one of those rotation pieces. He's going to have a game like he did on Sunday, and then next week it's Rondell Moore, it's Christian Kirk, or it's AJ Green. So there's so many weapons there, as we talked about with Kyler earlier. They're just not all going to have those big games. So Ertz is 30, as you mentioned. He's probably more in that. He might be outside of my top 12 tight ends right now. Yeah.
He was for me when he was in Philly. Rhys, what are you thinking?
I was basically agreeing with you, but you're shocked, aren't you? But I was thinking, how crazy is it that from before the season, we are now saying that we'd rather have Ertz than Goddard, at least for this season.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think that's kind of the more interesting conversation is because I do think they both benefited, which we really knew they would. These Ertz trade rumors or even rumors that he could be cut have been going on basically since the end of last season. So it was pretty clear that once they separated, the value of each one goes up slightly. But I think the growth we saw there value-wise from Ertz might push him ahead of Goddard. He is older, but Goddard is not super young himself, 26 right now. Comparing a 26-year-old tight end to a 30-year-old, not necessarily a huge difference there. So I think you can pretty easily make a case to prefer Ertz over Goddard in Dynasty, and certainly in redraft.
Oh yeah.
And Ertz has looked a lot, at least in one game, in the previous game against the Buccaneers, has looked a lot, but in those two games, looked better than Goddard has in this entire season.
Plus, you're tying yourself to a quarterback and an offense. I mean, the Eagles have a decent chance to lose the Lions this week. And so you have a chance there to tie yourself to Kyler Murray and the ascending Cardinals, or the Eagles, who may be circling the drain.
Well, sometimes it's that simple, and I think tight end is one of those positions where that's the case. I mean, you look at the two breakout tight ends this year, Dalton Schultz and Dawson Knox. It's probably not even fair to say that of Schultz, because he did it last year. We just didn't think he would do it again. But not only is he repeating, he's outdoing himself. And it's got to be pretty obvious that one of the main factors there is, I want Josh Allen's tight end. I want Dak's tight end. I want these players in the Cowboys offense, in the Bills offense, in the Cardinals offense, and so on. And when you're looking at tight ends, I mean, Rhys, you said it earlier with Detroit and Goff and Hawkinson, that hurts him. It hurts him value-wise, because we just can't trust that offense long-term. We certainly can't trust Jared Goff.
Said it on previous podcasts. I'll say it again here. The Lions should have drafted Justin Fields, as did half the other teams before he went.
I was going to say several teams should have,
Like
including your team.
Yeah, I will tell you, Ryan,
We don't need to bring that.
about 5 years ago, I did a tight end study, and everything I've seen since kind of confirms it. To have a top elite, so top 6 tight end for fantasy, either has to be in a prolific offense like Dallas, or you have to be the number one option in the offense. And I think those are the only two ways. You either have to be tied to a great quarterback, or you have to be the number one option. And we've seen that, like Greg Olson was for Carolina.
Excuse me.
Bless you. But there's only two ways to be a top tight end. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be the third option or fourth option on an average offense.
Okay, so based on that, what are we thinking about Noah Fant right now?
That's who I was thinking.
Well, that's
Because
why I think
he's the third option. It's not an elite offense. Yet
not
he's
sustainable.
he's a top 6 or 7 dynasty tight end if you look at rankings, or if you
Yep.
look at ADP, because he's young and he was highly drafted, and he certainly has shown some flashes. But when you start lining him up, like, should we take Fant ahead of Gesicki right now, who's,
No.
I guess he's probably we should call him the second option. Jalen Waddle has already kind of stepped up, I think, but or the guys that I mentioned, Knox or Schultz, they're certainly not the first option, but they are part of elite offenses.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about the draft capital, but the year before Fant was drafted, there was 3 first-round tight ends, and I'm pretty sure we want none of them. OJ Howard, Evan Ingram, and David Njoku.
Oh, Rhys is coming in off the top rope on us, Ryan. And so,
It's true.
yes. And so that's also why I wasn't as high on Irv Smith as others, because there's no way he's top option.
No way he's
And-
top 2 option
Right.
or 3 option if Cook's healthy.
And they don't throw it enough. I mean, you look at those guys who put up production. Max Williams, before he got hurt, was outproducing a lot of those other guys. And, Andrews, you could make a case as the top option, he or Hollywood. I think that'd be an argument either way. But you guys understand my thought, is if you're looking for a tight end, you either want the top option on an average passing team,
Waller.
right, or you want tie yourself to a high end one. Because if you're not the top receiving option on an average or worse passing team, how often did New Orleans throw to the tight end? Very little. Kamara's their number one, right?
Yeah.
And there's just not enough targets. And so, like the Jets, do you really want their tight end? No. And
I don't
so-
want any Jets players, period.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there, and we could argue semantics, whether it's the second or the third, or what constitutes a great offense. It's just either the top option or paired in a great offense with a great quarterback. That's you want to pick a good tight end. That's how.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just, you've got to tell yourself the story of how are they becoming relevant, right? How does this guy get into my lineup every single week? And of course, now we've got 7 weeks of data to do this with, and we can talk hindsight. I wish I'd listened to you on Irv Smith, though, because I was into him and targeting him as a trade option or as a draft target this offseason. But you're right. I mean, at best, he was the third option this year, and there wasn't any certainty that was the case. Now, of course, the injury, it's not fair to knock him for that, but
Right.
do we assume he would be targeted ahead of Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen right now? No. So, and that's not exactly an elite offense anyway. They've got some elite producers, but elite offense, no, not really. So yeah, you got to tell yourself the story of how do they get there. And if I'd done that, I probably would have been off of Irv Smith.
Yes. Draft capital kills them a lot of the time. Makes them half the time, but kills them even harder on the other.
Especially on tight ends.
Just ask the Hayden Hurst versus Mark Andrews same year.
Yeah.
Sorry to hurt you.
Yeah, it just pains me.
So, we've talked about the kitchen sink leagues some during this podcast, and one of the key aspects of it is the Devys. That's why you have Lawrence and Fields, and you probably have had some good Devy players, and that's why they're still on your roster. Probably, guess no, you wouldn't have Dak, but some of your good receivers. So, who have been some of the college players that have jumped out at you so far this season?
I think it's been a rough year for a lot of the top Devy players. I mean, if you look at a Devy draft, especially a super flex Devy draft from this past offseason, there's a decent chance your top two picks were Spencer Rattler and DJU from Clemson, and both of those guys have had serious falls, to say the least, in value and production and expectations. Of course, Spencer Rattler getting benched out in Oklahoma, out your guys' way, and DJU. It's just, I think he actually did get benched on last Saturday. We'll see who starts the rest of the way for Clemson, but both of those guys have struggled. It's been definitely disappointing. On a more positive note, I think Matt Corral for Ole Miss has stepped up. He looks like a dual threat option running the ball and has been an adequate passer, certainly for them as well. I do get a little worried about chasing players in those type of offenses. They're always going to produce on a college level. And does that translate when he's in an NFL offense? I don't know. I don't know if it does. But he certainly had a good year, really a great year so far, maybe the Heisman front runner at this point. Isaiah Spiller has impressed me. I think he's probably the RB1 in the class of 2022. Traylon Burks, wide receiver for Arkansas, has been another that has definitely caught my eye. I keep saying all these SEC guys. This is mainly what I watch. Kentucky, my guys finally having a good year. So I'm enjoying the SEC for once in my life.
So there are two guys in the SEC that have kind of disappointed. We have Pickens and we have Butte down in LSU. And, I loaded up on Butte, or however you pronounce his last name.
Yep, that's it.
And I loaded up on him in those Devy leagues. I liked him, and I was worried about Burke's speed. But after seeing him last week, that was a wrong thing to worry about. When he took the end around, and he looked like Deebo Samuel to me. He's thick like that. He looks like Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, it's bully ball with Traylon Burks. He's tough. He's tough. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, he looks like a 49ers. He looks like Ayuk, and he looks like one of those guys.
At least they can get Ayuk's replacement.
Yeah, they get Ayuk's replacement. Ryan didn't have Ayuk in the top three receivers. That was kind of surprising.
Weird how that happened.
In all seriousness, or Debo, who's been producing so far this season.
Yeah, Debo has. But also, what I was going to say, though, Ryan, is like there's a lot of people on Drake London out at USC. I'm unsure about his speed because he always mosses guys. I just don't know if that if we look at the archetypes of the receivers that get drafted early, other than Jamar Chase, most of them are fast or very, very good route runners and not the big physical guys.
Right.
So I don't know. Who else in the SEC is, or outside of the SEC has impressed you this year? Anybody at Ohio State or?
Yeah, I think I hit on most of my SEC guys that are at the top of the list. I mean, the Ohio State receivers, obviously Olave and Garrett Wilson there as well. Let's see who else. So many of these guys. You mentioned Boutte is a 2023 guy, and that's kind of already been one of the narratives that the 2022 class is not one you want to really focus on if you're trading for picks or if you're rebuilding, but look ahead of the next full year to 2023. And, that's when you've got Bijan Robinson. Jeff, you mentioned my tweet earlier suggesting that the RB1, wide receiver 1, tight end 1 could all be rookies. A little bit of pushback I got on that. Actually got a lot of pushback on that, mostly saying it was Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Swift, which I am on board with. Those would be my top 2 guys. But also had a few suggestions that Bijan Robinson was actually the dynasty RB1, meaning that those players, those dynasty managers would rather have Bijan Robinson than DeAndre Swift or Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey or anybody else you want to talk about. And I mean, I love playing Devy, Jeff. You know that we've played in these leagues for a long time, and I love trying to find these guys before anybody else does, or get them on my roster, or whatever the case may be. I just think it's crazy to value any college player like that. We're still a year and a half from putting Bijan Robinson on our real dynasty teams, away from Devy, and then who knows, right? I mean, you don't want to think about injury, but that's a realistic option. He could tear up his knee next week, and now his value changes. I don't think he's the type of player that we're going to see a drop off with. We've seen that a lot, especially at that running back position. A player looks like a sure thing and then struggles their last year of college or can't make the transition or whatever. I don't think that happens with Robinson, but to value him that highly when he's still a couple of years away, not for me.
Well, for me, the thing with Robinson is, where do you draft him if you're an NFL team? Do you wait for that talent to go into the 20s like we did for Najee or ETN? Or do you go the opposite route and draft him number 4 overall like the Cowboys and Jaguars did in 2016, 2017? Or do you find that middle ground, pick 15 or so?
Yeah, but to the Jets, man. If he's number 5 to the Jets, he goes south, right? I'd say Jets. That's probably the latest pick they'll have in the next decade. But
give Zach Wilson a little credit, Dad. He'll get him to at least 7, or maybe Urban Meyer can draft him 3rd overall.
Yeah.
With what team? He'll. Now, I think if you're talking draft value, NFL draft value, where a guy like Robinson might project, I mean, he's certainly that class, but there's a lot of good running backs in that 2023 class. At least, again, we're still trying to project more than a year out, but there's definitely a lot of backs who look like they could be strong dynasty assets and first or second day picks in that draft. So I think back to what we saw last year. We thought Jonathan Taylor would be that guy who could be a top 5 or 10 pick in the NFL draft. And of course, he ended up not even being the first running back drafted. I'm sure the Chiefs would like to have that one back. But regardless, I think what hurt Taylor and what hurt some of those other guys were the depth of the class. So, yes, we think Bijan Robinson is the best back in the class, but is he so good that we spend a top 5 or 10 pick on him? Or can we wait to day 2 and get Jahmyr Gibbs? Or can we wait and get Zach Evans? Or can we wait and get I'm running out of names already. Tank Bigsby is another great one, another SEC guy too, Jeff. Can we wait can we wait to day 2 and get one of those guys instead? And so because of that, I could actually see Robinson falling, to the mid or late first round.
So 2 things. First of all, I like Zamir White better than some of those guys you listed.
Oh,
And
you'll be able to get him.
White's got speed. So.
And he's a big dude. And so, I mean, he looks like what some teams would like in a running back. You know what I mean?
That's true.
But the other thing is, those that are saying, who's this Bijan Robinson guy? I encourage you to go look up his high school stats, where he got a touchdown on like 20 or 50% of his carries. It was crazy. And you look, and he was playing against good competition, but it was
for
like,
high school.
For high school, but it was like he was playing against nobodies. He was just so dominant before he injured his knee as a senior, but he was really good. The other guy in the class after that, Ryan, I think, is Henderson from Ohio State. And what's that, 24?
Yeah.
I think he'll be the class. Well, as we know now, the class of that.
Right. So I think the tough thing with valuing Robinson versus current NFL running backs is just thinking about it from a team building standpoint. If I have a contending team right now, then I want somebody who's going to help me right now.
Right.
So, I mean, if I'm in a Devy league and I've got Bijan Robinson and I can trade him for Swift, or I can trade him for Najee Harris or Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey or even Alvin Kamara or Dalvin Cook, one of the veterans who can help me now and presumably next season as well, while Robinson is finishing out his college career. I think that's the way I would go. Yeah. If I don't have a contending team, if I'm tearing it down, rebuilding, productive struggle, looking ahead to the future, then running back is the last thing I'm worried about. I'm trying to lock in my quarterbacks for the long term. I'm trying to build around young wide receivers. And I'm not going to even honestly worry about the running back position until I am ready to contend. And, you could say that I'll be ready in 2 years. So let's go ahead and get Robinson now. I'm not making that assumption. I've been able to build teams from scratch, certainly in less than 2 years, obviously to become a contender. But it doesn't work every time. And to spend what you would have to spend on Bijan Robinson right now in the Devy league, I'm just not willing to do it. So it sounds crazy, but there's kind of either side of the fence that you're on with him. It doesn't necessarily make sense to roster him right now. It's wild to even say that.
But there's also there's an opportunity cost that you're not using that
exactly
for 2 years. I was looking up the stats. I can't find them quickly, but I was looking up his stats just because they are so outrageous. His high school stats, and
are they as crazy as Derrick Henry's?
Yes. I think they're at least that crazy.
Oh, wow.
And basically the same player archetype too, with big, fast, strong dudes.
Are you looking it up, Ryan?
Yeah, I've got it here. So 2023 rushing yards and 26 touchdowns as a sophomore.
Out of how many touches?
That was on 189 carries. So it's a 10.7 average.
So 189 carries, 26 of them were touchdowns. And that is, that's like unfathomable.
Right. Junior year, 170 carries.
Yeah.
2,400 rushing yards, 14.1 average, and 35 touchdowns.
So that's one out of what, every two?
35 touchdowns on 170 carries.
Oh, 170. So one out of every 5 carries.
And then senior year, you mentioned the knee injury, missed a couple games. It looks like just played 11 games, 126 carries, 2,235 yards, averaged 17.7 yards per rush, and scored 38 touchdowns. So finished his career with over 7,000 rushing yards, 103 touchdowns. He had a 100-yard game 32 times out of 46.
I expect
Just
to be higher.
yeah, just some crazy numbers. Well, his freshman year only 100-yard game out of 9 games. So it looks like he was a backup his freshman year, which is understandable.
Oh, it's not understandable to me. How do you see that guy in practice and go, nah, we have another guy better?
I love Barry Sanders.
That is exactly who I think of as Barry Sanders. Pat Jones, you can tell I'm an Oklahoma State guy. Pat Jones sees Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders every day in practice and goes, yeah, we're not going to give Barry any carries this week. You know what I mean? Like Barry Sanders didn't just, when he was a sophomore, wake up and be that good. You know what I mean? Like I think dude had innate ability.
Well, I mean, we see it all the time in the NFL. We see coaches who are just not apt to give rookies as much playing time as certainly as we think they deserve, but maybe as much as they do actually deserve or would make sense for their team. And I'm sure college coaches are the same way with incoming freshmen.
Yeah.
But you mentioned people not wanting to give playing time to rookies. Well, at least in the words of Bud Grant, it was because that he did not trust their ability not to make mistakes. And according to some veterans, I think it was William, starts with a K. It's a long last name. I forgot. Oh, Wally something. He's a Hall of Fame center for him. Or Michael. Anyways, now it's going to bug me. But he was like, that held us back on 2 or 3 of our Super Bowl teams, that we weren't giving our good rookies, enough playing time.
Yes, but some guys are old school in that way, right? And so
Hard to get older school than Bud Grant.
yes. Ryan, we thank you for joining us and talking dynasty and rookies. This time went by quickly for us. We could have this conversation for hours, but I know neither one of our wives would enjoy us checking out for that length of time.
Yeah, can't get in too much trouble around the house.
I try, and Rhys tries to help me get in trouble.
I do not try. You don't need any help, Dad.
But Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Always fun.
Oh yeah.
Bye.